Using M&A to acquire Dutch remote license or licenses. As recent developments have shown, simply buying a Dutch license holder will not automatically get you approved as license holder by the Netherlands Gambling Authority. So what exactly should prospective buyers and sellers keep an eye out for? I'm very happy to welcome Frans Tolboom and Chris Adriaansz of Franssen Tolboom Advocaten, who will tell us everything about this. Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Willem, for having us. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. 2 more panels to go. This is a legal panel, and after this a CEO panel. Although it's a legal panel, try to make it entertaining. If it comes too boring, just raise the red paper in your hand, and I will ask him a different question. We're going to discuss M&A activity on the Dutch market. As most of you have seen, there has already been a number of transactions on the Dutch market. With Bad City, Entain, Tobola, Stars. Now we see investments from private equity, FTCA, Unibet, Glitner One Casino, and this week we've seen, or you may have seen, the article about Betson, who was abandoning the acquisition of Gold Run. We're going to discuss that case later. So what we're going to do in the next 20 minutes is basically give you an overview what are the basics of a not just M&A process, more the KSA approval process. So what do you need to do? What steps do you need to go through? We're going to discuss the pitfalls and some practical recommendations, maybe to prevent something which happened with Betson. Today I'm very pleased with Chris as speaker today. I know from very close sources he is the expert in reliability assessment. He assists a number of clients, both listed and private equity, in a number of transactions. And he had the pleasure of dealing with the KSA. Some proceedings took more than 2 years, I think.
Correct.
It was not an application, but well, in some way it can be similar to an application in that regard. So maybe Chris, can you maybe start with the basics? Is it possible even to transfer a license? Can you simply buy a company, or do you need to buy the entity? How does this work?
Okay. Well, thank you for the introduction. So you can't buy a license, you can't buy the license itself. So the license itself is non-transferable. So if you want to acquire a remote gambling license, you have to buy the license holder. You have to buy the shares in the licensed entity. Okay, so there is a big advantage in, let's say you don't want to go to the application phase. That can be a painful experience, as most of you know. You can simply buy a license. Is that correct? And then you need to go to the regulator, and will the regulator give its approval, or how does that process work? So you have to buy the license. So you have to buy the license holder, and instead of what you see in other jurisdictions and what you also see for financial services licenses, is that you don't have a pre-approval process like you have for those sectors and those jurisdictions, but you have an after-the-fact assessment. So that means that after the shares are transferred, after you buy the shares in a license holder, then you have to notify the gambling authority, and the gambling authority will then assess the reliability of the new shareholder and the persons associated with the new shareholder. And the license holder has to submit that notification to the KSA, and the notification has to take place within 14 days after the shares are transferred.
So is this process similar to the application, or are there some differences?
So if you submit the notification, when you submit the notification, you will receive, as a license holder, you will receive a question form from the NGA. And indeed, that process is more or less similar to what the license holder has seen during the license application phase. So you will receive a question form, and you have to provide answers to the KSA, and you have to submit all the information to the KSA. There are slight changes, but overall the process is the same. So there are slight changes since 2021, 2022, mostly regarding information requirements. So the NDA has limited the information somewhat, but still the reliability assessment is a very burdensome process.
Maybe can you elaborate a bit, because many have go through the application phase, but some are not. Can you please tell us what is this reliability assessment? Do you need to share the details of the UBO, or
Yeah. Is it more burdensome than that?
Yeah, it's definitely more burdensome than that. So the NDA casts a very, very wide net over the new shareholder. So obviously you have to provide details about the new shareholder, but you also have to provide details right up to the chain, up to the EBOs. So the whole chain of control from the company that is acquiring the shares up to the UBOs. And then you also have to provide information on the horizontal relationships. And that can include 10 companies, it can include 100 companies, but it can also include over 1,000 companies if you have a very big international group, such as Betson, that acquires a license holder. And there are no exceptions for big international groups. So if you simply fall within the criteria of the reliability assessment, you have to provide information about that specific entity.
And are there not any thresholds or?
There are certain materiality thresholds, and there are also certain limitations, but I will not dive into the specifics of those criteria. That's a bit too detailed, I guess, for this conference.
And maybe, maybe we have many presentations today, but maybe questions to the audience. Let's see where they all are awake. Is someone in the audience thinks that in the next 1 or 2 years, if you're an operator, do you think you will be acquired, or do you have an intention to buy a company? Please raise your hands. Yes, I see one. It's a bit business sensitive, of course. Or others, maybe you think there will be a consolidation, of course. I heard some rumors, Nick, about Evoke buying a Bet365 and some others. How does it work with operators maybe who have been on the market previously? They didn't get a license for God knows what kind of reason. Like Evoke is not on the market with its brands, but it's going to buy a license. Do you think they will run into issues if they maybe, for example, buy Bet365 or?
Yeah, so I hate to break it to you, Nick, but you will definitely run into issues if that situation evolves. That is one of the major hurdles we've seen over the past few years. That's past wrongdoings, specifically unlicensed offers. So as I said, the NDA casts a very broad net over the new shareholder, but also over directors of the new shareholder, and also over entities within the group of the new shareholder. And you have to provide information about any past wrongdoings of all those persons and entities. And the NDA will specifically focus on unlicensed offers in on the Dutch market. Of course, unlicensed offers before 2021, that will also be investigated. And if there is an unlicensed offer, if there has been an unlicensed offer in the past 8 years, that will in principle mean you will receive a negative assessment. And a negative assessment can mean that you have to reverse the acquisition, like Betson did. Although Betson did not receive ultimately a negative assessment, but that can become a consequence.
But at the same time, you also see that, for example, Entain bought Bad City and Franssen bought Unibet. And that appears to have been approved.
Yeah. So there's not a lot of public information about those cases, but it probably has to do with the cooling off criteria. So some of you here in the room might remember that there was a leniency program that applied right after the market opening, or just before the market opening, between April 2021 and April 2022. And that leniency program, I won't go into all the details of that leniency program, but that program essentially meant that if you had an unlicensed offer, or an offer within the group, and that stayed within certain criteria, the cooling off criteria, that would not automatically mean that you would receive a negative reliability assessment. But that leniency program only applied for that 1 year between April 2021 and April 2022. So if you apply for a license now and you had an unlicensed offer, even though it might have complied with the cooling off criteria, you still will receive a negative reliability assessment.
Okay. I don't see any red paper, so everyone understands this still. Getting back also to the Betson case, you have not been involved, but why do you think it took so long? Or maybe you can draw upon your own experiences. What's the process? Why can't the regulator tell the operator within like 2 months, okay, here's the approval, yes or no?
Yeah. So actually, the Batson case is in line with what we've seen over the past few years. So reliability assessments in relation to acquisitions take a very long time. On average, it's 12 months, but it can also take an even longer period, and that is mainly because of two factors. So the first factor is, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, the NDA casts a very wide net, and it means that if you have a big international structure like Batson had, you have to provide information on a lot of different entities. And that means that information can simply fall through the cracks. And if you provide insufficient information, then the NDA can come back with a question or a demand of information, and that can go back and forth for a while. So that is one of the reasons that it can take a long time. What we also see with big international groups is that there are directors that had an involvement in other industries, in other entertainment industries, but even in the hotel sector, or an involvement at a competitor. And they have to provide information about all those past relationships as well. So the look-back period for those relationships is 8 years. And it means that a license holder can end up in a position that it has to provide information about an entity that is not within their group. They may even have to provide information about a competitor. If a Batson director, for example, was a director of PokerStars, then that means that Gold Run has to provide information about what PokerStars has been doing in the past. That can be very difficult, of course, because Gold Run has no right to access that information. And that can also result in a discussion with the NDA. So those are the two factors that we see a lot.
So those are two issues, but let's say I'm a licensed operator, I would like to go for an exit, I find a buyer, but I immediately would like to cash. I don't want to run any risk that in about 2 years, like happened with Gold Run, suddenly everything will be reversed. Is there anything which you would recommend? Is there something, maybe in the SPA, or what would you advise in this regard?
Well, that very much depends on the circumstances of the case. So what you normally do in an M&A process is that you will include the condition precedent in your SPA. So that means that the shares will only be transferred if that condition precedent is met. And that condition precedent generally includes the regulatory pre-approval. So you will only transfer the shares once you have the approval from the regulator. But we don't have a regulatory pre-approval in the Netherlands, so you can't include such condition precedent for a Dutch acquisition. What you can do is you can think about a warranty, so that the buyer warrants to the seller that it will pass the reliability assessment. You can also come up with a solution like Batson and Gold Run did, so that you have a breakup fee. But it's very difficult, and it depends on the circumstances of the case, how you want to draft your SPA, and also depends on how good your due diligence is.
Okay, I think we have 4 minutes left, so maybe are there any questions from the audience? Have any question been asked through Slido, Willem?
I think we have one question in Slido that we just looked at for you. If we can have it on the screen, please. Might once casino expect a similar review as to its reliability when it comes to relicensing in 2027?
Yes, definitely. The big question currently is whether that will be a shorter assessment or whether that will be a broad assessment like in 2021 and 2022. We are currently lobbying with the NDA to have it to make a shorter assessment. Hopefully the NDA will agree, because it will also save time on their part. And obviously a license holder and most of the structure will have already gone through the reliability assessment upon the initial application. And they also have to provide information during the exploitation of the license. So if nothing changes right before the license renewal, then the NDA should be fully aware of the structure of the license holder, and also of the reliability of all the persons associated with the license holder. So hopefully it can be a very, very quick assessment, but yeah, we never know with the KSA, so.
Yeah, so in summary, operators are already required to submit anything within 2 weeks. So, and with anything, I mean relevant changes in the top structure, for example, the relevant policymakers, directors, shareholders. Everything should be on file with the KSA. So basically, you can skip the reliability assessment with the licensing phase next year or the year after.
With the market developing, I'm sure we will hear more about you the coming years, but for now, thank you very much for sharing this, Chris.
Okay, thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank.